Alrighty, I said I'd make a video talking about, like, the Mythic testing and that kind of thing, and how it's looking. The reality is, it's arms tier. It's an arms tier, boys. This is for sure going to be an arms tier. Our tier set is very good now. We're probably going to get some buffs to make us even better. We're not doing too well right now in terms of damage, but their balancing's generally good, even if it's a little late, so we'll see. But I expect us to definitely get some changes that won't get reverted this time. Let's just kind of go over the bosses and kind of why it's going to be an arms tier. The first boss, all you're really doing is boss damage. It spawns these little motorcycles that you'll see here in the fight. These motorcycles can easily be hit with sweeping strikes and blade storm, that kind of thing. But there's not really a bunch of adds. Everything's really just priority damage on the boss. You'll hit sweeping strikes and you'll hit these adds around you. You'll kill them off pretty quickly. The mechanics of the fight is basically you'll get these purple circles around you, and that drops oil puddles. The cars will drive through the oil puddles. It'll stun them. You'll kill the cars. When the cars die, I got DC'd here. But when the cars die, they drop these circles. It's actually pretty noob-friendly, or a pug-friendly mechanic, where no matter how many people are in these circles, only one person gets the debuff and one person gets the oil that spawns out of these. So every time you kill a car, it drops 2 oil. You'll pick up that oil, put it back in the car, run the car into the boss to remove its plating. When you remove all the plating, it goes into an intermission phase where it takes a damage amp. If you do not remove all the platings before the boss gets full energy, it starts channeling and you're dead. That's just kind of the boss. It's pretty simple. It's very easy. The fact that the swirlies, when you soak them... So these swirlies, when you soak them, like let's say there's 4 people in this one swirly, only one person gets the debuff and gets the oil that needs to be run back over and put into the motorcycle. So it's pretty noob-friendly, very easy first boss. But it's just going to be arms. We're going to be doing a lot of boss damage. We're just going to be focusing on boss damage, and that's a thing that's kind of really going to continue. The next boss going into it is the Crucible of Carnage. I do not like this fight. This fight has some very odd mechanics. The main mythic mechanic is it spawns these images. When these images contact a player, like if you're in the direct line, like if it touches you, it'll explode. But basically, you want to kite these images to the edge of the arena, drop puddles. That's fine. You'll be fighting each one boss at a time. You have this boss, and then you have the... If I can show you, have the T-Rex boss, and you have this boss. You'll start on one side, and then every intermission phase, you'll cross over and do the other side. The main reason is, while you're fighting the boss, you'll get a stacking debuff that does damage to you. And that's fine. There are mechanics like these circles, or these. Basically, you'll go like 1, 2, 3, and then you'll move. 1, 2, 3, move. As you get used to the fight, this mechanic where... Basically, as you move, you gain like a static charge. So if you move too much, this circle is your AoE, where like if you can stun people around. So I thought I was gonna like do an AoE damage, so I just jumped out. And this is one of our early pulls. But movement builds up this bar, and if you're within this area, when this bar is full, you will stun yourself and everyone in this area. So it's going to be a very controlled movement fight on both sides. The mythic mechanic, however, is very annoying, and I don't like it. The mythic mechanic is these toys. Each side spawns like 8 or 9 toys. I don't know the exact number, but essentially what's going to end up happening is each side is going to have a bitch player. Just like you did with Council of Dreams and the Ducks, each side is going to be have someone that is going to kick these toys towards the other player. So what ends up happening is you have the toy from the monkey and the toy from the T-Rex. When they get close enough, they automatically walk towards each other and collide and put a dot on the raid. During the intermission phase, when the bosses charge into each other, all of the toys that are left automatically charge into each other. So if you have too many up, you just instantly wipe. So it's just going to be somebody on each side is just going to play kick the toy, realistically. And it's probably going to be like a healer or a mobile ranged. like a hunter or something, it's going to be a really annoying mechanic. Excuse me. I personally don't like it very much. Also, once again, this is for sure going to be an arms fight, because when these bosses come together, which you'll see here, they are right next to each other. That's big sweeping strikes, cleave value. I don't know exactly what the best CD timings are going to be. It's probably going to be based on the kill time. It looks like the first the clashes are roughly about a minute into the fight, so I think it's possible that I don't want to say we're going to hold our CDs for the first clash because that sounds terrible. But depending on how many actual uses of Avatar we get in the fight, we might be holding it, we might be not, but that's a whole other thing. That'll just be mathed out later and we'll figure it out. But outside of the toy mechanic, I think this fight is fine. It's basically like, hey, during this intermission, you can cleave the boss, dodge the stuff on the floor. It's area control. So when you have the lightning puddles, they last for the whole fight, or they last for a while, so you don't want to spawn them just all over. You want to spawn them towards the sides. And it's the same thing for the... let's see if we get to... I should get over to the... yeah. So when you swap sides, once again, this guy also has toys, but the mechanic is he shoots down a scrap bomb. Everybody has to soak it, and then after he puts down the bomb, he targets someone with the beams. The person with the beams just has to aim the beams away, and you also don't want to aim it at the other players on the other side because you can hit them with it, and obviously if you're forcing the other side to move more than they need to, it's possible you can force a stun, which can force a death, and it can cascade problems. But the other Mythic mechanic is after this bomb explodes, it leaves a big pool on the ground. So once again, we're dealing with area denial like the other side. So we're going to be baiting these pools towards the walls. And the boss puts an AoE that lasts 15 seconds on everybody and does damage to everybody in the AoE. So this is very not fun for melee. There's very few melee spots, especially if you're not controlling the area efficiently. Otherwise, you're just going to be doing a ton of damage to each other. And this is just going to repeat beams, bomb, AoE, beams, bomb, AoE. The other side is just dodging and not filling up your bar and stunning other players. But this is realistically probably going to be the second boss that most people do in terms of difficulty. And it's also an arms fight for sure. And it is going to be very annoying in pugs if they do not nerf or change the toy mechanic, because it's just going to force people to just play the bitch role. And that I don't like bosses where it's just like, hey, these couple players are the bitch role. Realistically, the idea of it is like, oh, everybody kicks the toy towards the middle, and then maybe one guy kind of kicks that toy, or you have a healer that's controlling how many toys are exploding at once, yada yada. But realistically, this fight is just, I think this toy mechanic is bad, and it needs to either be highly mitigated to where there's only like 3 or 4 toys so you can deal with them and then just actually play the video game, or something. But having someone have to do this like weird, annoying, like bitch job isn't fun. It's probably, and what's also going to end up happening is you might do like 3 or 4 of these toys, and then you'll just all defensive cooldown through all the toys clashing during the intermission. And maybe you'll line up cooldowns for that and AMZs and barriers and that kind of thing. So you can mitigate doing that mechanic as much as possible, and then just kind of heal and mitigate through the damage. But I think the toy mechanic's kind of bad. I don't like, it's kind of okay, but like I don't like it. I think they need to change it to where one of the actual issues with these toys is that when they spawn, you don't have an extra action button to interact with them. If you get too close, they just automatically kick. So instead of actually, like, for example, you see this toy here. To get to this toy, I can't approach it, walk on the other side, and then hit an extra action button to kick it over. I have to go all the way around all of these toys to the wall to get behind it to then move up to it. Otherwise, I'm going to end up kicking these toys into the wall, or these toys away from where they're supposed to go. Or if I try and thread the needle here, I might be kicking this thing into the wall. Because if you kick these toys into the wall, you literally cannot move them anymore, and they will essentially be a death condition, because when the bosses come together, all the toys cross and explode, and you just die. So the toy mechanic, I mean, is kind of okay, but they definitely need to do... See, like, this is how far away I am from this toy, which you'll see here. I'm within 5 yards, so I'm within melee. Once I'm in melee range of the toy, it automatically kicks it. I really don't like that. They need to make it an extra action button or something. But if you're wondering what this circle is, basically when your charge gets too high, you show a circle around you, and that circle is the indicator of where, if your charge gets too high, it'll stun in that area. You can immune it with things like Blade Storm, but realistically, these are early pulls, so this stutter step is not the way to deal with this mechanic. What you're realistically going to do is you're going to wait for 1, 2, 3 puddles to drop, and then you're going to move. And then 1, 2, 3, and then move. And then 1, 2, 3, and then move. And by playing like that instead of like stutter stepping, you'll generate way less charge. It'll be way more clean. This is mainly going to be a fight about, hey, don't drop these puddles in bad spots. Hopefully they change this toy mechanic in some way so it's not nearly as bad. And we'll be, as melee especially, just kind of controlling our movement. It's going to be a very patient fight. And then the boss will come together and we'll use our cooldowns. Yada, yada. But yeah, Sweeping Strikes, Arms boss, good. There's none of the add damage matters. It's just pure boss damage. Sweeping Strikes, good. So, Arms boss again. Now, the next boss, Break Reverb. There is some adds in this fight, and they do matter. But realistically, the adds are so infrequent. I think there's like a minute between ad spawns. It only spawns 5 of the adds. At least this is on PTR testing. That realistically, it's probably going to be arms. You're just going to be focusing on boss damage. Hell yeah, hell yeah. Hit the boss, hit the boss. So this boss is kind of wild. So like it spawns these pyrotechnics. If any of the, in the dungeon journal, it said if any of these pyrotechnic things go off, your raid just dies. We took a ton of damage, but I'm assuming they lowered the actual damage values of these things so they could actually just test it efficiently. We were even lusting them. Yeah, you'll see this thing goes off, and this is supposed to kill your raid. It's supposed to do like 8 million damage every second or something. Obviously, we're not taking that much damage. During our testing, we were 644 item level, which is 5 item levels below 1 of 6 hero tracks. So we're going to be way higher item level when fighting these bosses as well. Won't have like full tier early on, but we're going to be way higher item level when dealing with these bosses for sure. But this boss mechanic is you see these things have a charge. Essentially what's going to happen is people get these blue circles. When they collide, they get a debuff, and then they run that debuff into the amplifier, which then breaks the shield and lets it be charged. The Dungeon Journal says you can't remove charge without breaking the shield. So maybe they just let us do this for progression's sake. But once these things get max charge, they just start spewing out damage to the whole raid. And you have to deal with a lot of these during the fight. There's essentially 2 phases, the intermission phase, and then this phase that we're dealing with, where it spawns the adds every minute, and then it puts down these additional pylons that we're dealing with. What we ended up doing is there's groups of 2. Every pylon drop essentially is assigned to 2 players, and between those 2 players, they can take turns draining it from full to 0. While you are draining it, you're taking a lot of damage, so you definitely want to be popping stuff like your defensive, spell reflect, distance, that kind of thing, while soaking it. And then the other player waits till it gets about 75% charge, and then they'll soak theirs. So it's going to be basically like each pillar will be assigned, each drop will be assigned. The pillars are baited on where players are dropping, so you can like place them. You can kind of place them where you want to, but it's going to be like, okay, there's the tank pillar. because one pillar always drops on the boss, on the tank, and another pillar always drops randomly. So most likely it's going to be, okay, set one tank pillar is this player, and then the other pillar is this player. Set two tank pillars, this player, the other pillar is that player, and that's kind of going to how you go throughout the fight, as well as killing the ads. One thing that is important to note is, let's see, there. Okay, you can barely see it, but look at the boss. There'll be a blue line that shows up off of the boss, and this is a frontal. So this right here, you can probably barely see it here. But this blue clone, people have to stack in it because this does a sound cannon at a player. So you see this line debuff at them. You have to have as many players as you can stack within this line and soak it. Otherwise, the player that is targeted gets what's called entranced. They just get MC'd and potentially killed. Obviously, you don't want people to get MC'd. You don't want them to die. So just while this is happening, everyone that can needs to soak this. So the person that gets targeted does not get MC'd, essentially. So with a more coordinated group and a better plan, instead of just walking into it, it'll probably be going way better. You can see our health just being exploded here. And that's because we had two of these going off at the same time. You can see everyone's health just like crumbling down while this is happening. So it's going to be a lot of these fights. The damage itself doesn't really matter as much. It's just going to be, hey, do the mechanics or you will die. Just do the mechanics. And that's where we're at with Rick Reverb. Also, every single time you pull this boss, you'll get to enjoy this sound effect. Here is it for you to enjoy.
We'll be wiping in a minute, dude. Check on the
Rick Reverb. Oh, yeah. You might have also gotten feedback in my mic from that. I hope you didn't, but yeah, that's what you're going to hear that a lot. This fight will take a little bit of coordination. Most likely assignments will deal with it. Weak auras are going to help a lot. I really don't like the fact that I'm assuming, hey, oh yeah, a lot of this is just going to be dealt with weak auras. These pillars that he drops can actually be targeted and marked. So most likely every single pillar is going to be marked with like a skull or an X or a circle. And then you're going to have a weak aura that says, soak circle now. And then you'll go soak circle. And then you'll just keep doing the fight. Which is probably what's going to happen. The only other mechanic is while all of these things are happening, people are going to get blue circles on them. It should show it here in a second. So you see these blue circles that people have? Basically, when you get these, you hit each other. So like you bash up against each other and it gives you a debuff. And once you get that debuff from hitting another player, it allows you to walk into these pillars. He died before it could happen. But basically, these two people that have this circle debuff hit each other. It turns into a new debuff on your character, and then that allows you to walk into these pillars and break these shields, which you'll need to break them for later. But that is Rick Reverb. A lot of damage. A light amount of coordination. This might be the third boss you go to. I don't know. But this is, even for Pugs, is probably just going to turn into a weak aura boss. You kill the ads, you attack the boss, you soak when you're told to. That's probably going to be it. It's not too crazy, but right now we're taking a lot of damage and we're definitely uncoordinated. And that's like half guild, half pug group. So we're trying stuff out. We're trying to get things done. But some of the pyrotechnic stuff is really annoying. Like you can see 3 spawn here, which is good, so we can cleave them. But there's one here and there's one here. So it's going to be like you kill these and then the melee go to this one while the ranged are focusing this one. And then you go back to the bot. I don't know. They had a lot of health and we were like cooldowning them. But this is just going to be a mechanic where it's like, hey, you have to kill these or you just die. And these only last 15 seconds. So any like dot classes might not be too good at this because they might not have enough time to actually ramp to kill these quickly. So whatever, we're going to get on here. We're going to do our damage. We're going to kill these as quick as possible. If one blows up, whole raid blows up essentially. And yeah, that is Rick Reverb. Now let's move on to, and also Arms Boss. Now let's move on to Styx Bunk Junker. This boss is a lot of fun. I like this boss. I like the mechanic of it. It's kind of annoying, but it's just something that people are going to be assigned to things. Someone's going to be bombs. But the main mechanic of this fight is you see all these garbage pools around. When this boss does rolling rubbish, he targets 4 players, and then those players basically Katamari on top of a garbage ball and make a big ball, and then they either roll the ball into a bomb to disarm it, or they roll the ball into the boss to do damage. The things that the people on the balls have to look out for are these mobs here. These are like crabs. They're called territorial bombshells. What these mobs essentially do is they sit on top of garbage piles, and until you DPS them below 75% health, they just AFK on the garbage pile, protecting it. So if a ball rolls over that garbage pile into the bomb, it explodes and does raid-wide damage. So you have to focus killing these bombs, these crabs, as fast as possible, because if you also don't kill them in time, so just knocking them to 75% to get them off these trash piles isn't enough. You have to kill them before they self-destruct. Otherwise, it puts a massive dot on the whole raid. But I like this trash rolling mechanic. One of the mythic mechanics is you have to get at least medium size to roll up these scrap masters. When they spawn the first time, they do this ability called the Recycler. This targets a player and will instantly kill them if they are not rolled up. So you have to get your ball to half size and then roll over these mobs to get them stuck in your like little ball or whatever. And then once you use your soak your ball, you can either run it into the boss. It does, I think, 1.5% of the boss's max health if you hit the boss, or you do like what I do here, which is you run into the bomb to explode it, thereby making, because if that bomb goes off, obviously everyone dies. One thing that is specific to note is after you stop the first recycle cast, and you roll these, anything rolled up into a ball takes 100% additional damage in this fight. So rolling up all of the adds is really, really good. But the mobs, after you roll them up into a ball and stop that first recycler cast, do not recast that recycler thing. They just do raid damage. So after they're blown up and out of the ball, you just so after you hit something and they fall out of the ball, you just kill them, kick them so they stop doing raid damage, that kind of thing. What you're about to see here is we have 3 of these territorial bombshells still alive, these big crab guys. And because they have not died in time, we have 4 stacks of the mechanics. People are dead, and obviously that is going to kill us very, very quickly, and we just die. You'll probably be able to live like maybe 1 or 2 of those bombs going off. It's not the worst thing in the world. But this fight is basically just kill the bombshells, hit the boss. As the fight goes on, you get this noxious fumes debuff. Every single time the boss sets like a pile of trash on fire, you get this green debuff here. So you see these piles of trash are set on fire. So if you don't soak, so the less you soak, the more of this debuff you're going to get that's just going to do damage the whole time. This boss isn't that bad, especially with item level. I think it's going to be way, way easier. But there's a couple ways to think about it, where it's either like, are we going to do a bunch of AoE damage, or are we just going to wholly focus on boss damage? One of the big problems with this fight is you can see how spread out all of these adds are. And Warrior in general, not just Fury or Arms, does not do very good against massive spread ads like this. So what I'm going to guess is probably going to happen is we're probably going to play Slayer Arms. We're going to singly focus on Arms damage or DPS into the boss, and then when the ads, or as we're the ads are all grouped up, we might throw a Cleave or two in there because Cleave's baseline damage is pretty good now. But we're realistically probably just going to be playing Arms, pumping boss damage, and then throwing some Cleaves in here to do damage to these ads as things continue. Also, the Mythic mechanic is every time the boss flies up into the air like this, it gains a stack of a buff that makes it spawn more ads and more bombs during the roly-poly phase. So eventually, you're not actually going to be the enrage of this fight is technically the moment the boss goes up, I think 3 or 4 times, he will spawn more big bombs than you actually have roly-poly balls to deal with. And when that happens, you just die. So that's kind of the soft enrage of the encounter. So boss damage will be very, very important. But rolling on top of the ball is a lot of fun. I think this boss is pretty fun. I didn't expect a junk boss, like a goblin junk boss, to be in a raid like this, but this is really cool. I honestly like it a lot. I think it's a pretty fun fight. There are some annoying parts to it, but I think this will be a fight people like overall. But once again, a continuing theme here. Arms boss. Now here is an interesting boss. This is a pure single target boss, Arms boss again. But this boss has a bunch of basically like one-shot mechanics. If you don't, this is another one of those bosses where it's just, yo, do the mechanics, the boss will die. So like Thaddeus, you have a positive, negative. Like Silken Court, you have different charges. You do not instantly kill somebody if you walk into them, so that's good. But you do knock them back, and both players get a pretty nasty debuff. Like you see people getting knocked around here. But the mechanic is players of the same color have to soak these bombs that spawn. Two red spawn on the outside, and 2 blue spawn on the inside. And this happens every single mechanic set. So me, I get the first bomb set here. It does some raid-wide damage and puts a debuff on you that if you soak another bomb within 2 minutes, you just die. Even if you're a tank, it pierces immunities, so you can't like break immunities with this. But once again, this is literally just hey man, do mechanics, hit the boss, stay stacked in your group so you're not going to be like knocking other people. If you can get this, this is like a drill mechanic where if you get it, you just need to run out and get away from other people. Otherwise, you're just going to clog the room and have no space to actually play. So this drill mechanic is basically, hey man, just get out. But otherwise, this boss is pretty simple. Don't stand in the stuff. Do the mechanics. It can get a little hectic. One thing you need to be careful of is depending on the boss positioning, this middle conveyor will also start moving at some point. So if I'm positioning here, the conveyor would have moved me right into the beam, and that's just instant death. So this boss is also kind of annoying where he electrifies parts of the room, and then you just can't stand there. So it's just area denial as well. But once again, it's like, hey man, just do the mechanics, right? You come over here, blow up the bombs. You don't drop the stuff in the raid. The tank gets it's called a pyro party pack that he has to run out, or it'll explode and do a bunch of damage. It's basically like, it's just a movement and mechanics fight where it's like, hey, the movements will start kind of being not necessarily scripted because you can get a different debuff every time. It's like, hey, blue moves here, red moves here. Once we go over to this side of the mechanic, however, you actually see this thing starts moving, and you lose your debuff, and you actually get recalibrated. So so this debuff shows up before you get the mechanic. So because I'm blue, I'm going to get this blue debuff. I move over to the blue side, and you can see, obviously, it can chain, and you can start doing a lot of damage to each other and knocking each other around. It can get very messy very fast. So this is just going to be it's just going to be a controlled movement and then assignment fight. I don't know, like, there's probably going to be like a list week or something where it's like, hey, you do a bomb, then you do a bomb, then you do a bomb. People are going, I don't know if this red-blue mechanic is going to be private or anything like that. I'm not sure. But it's basically, it's just going to be a controlled movement fight. You once again, just don't drop these in central locations if you don't have to. Sometimes this shit happens, but it's just one of those controlled chaos kind of fights. And all single target, and is going to be arms. Very, very, very arms tier. The next boss is the One-Armed Bandit. So how it works currently in the raid schedule, or the raid setup, is you have Vex in the Gear Grinder. So you have Vex, and then you can choose any boss to go to, right? You have any of these bosses to go to, and then all of these bosses converge back into the One-Armed Bandit, and then that converges into Mugsy, the two-headed ogre guy, and then that converges into Gallywix. So you have first boss, 4 bosses to choose from, One-Armed Bandit, Mugsy, Gallywix is how this raid is designed. So the One-Armed Bandit should be the step up in terms of what's going on. And this fight is definitely, there's a lot going on. So, at least in its current iteration, these two real assistants don't matter at the start. People just blow them up anyway. But this is going to be, once again, an arms fight. It's an arms fight for a couple reasons. 1, boss damage is super, super important. And 2, this is the main mechanic. The boss will spawn an ad here, an ad here, and an ad here. You're just going to be moving the boss to the ads and cleaving them down. Perfect for 2-target, perfect for sweeping strikes. But one of the main mechanics here, one of the mythic mechanics here, is that 1, you can't feed the same combination into the boss. So like when these things die, it drops an electrocution and drops a fire token. You feed those back into the boss, and then the boss does a mechanic. But the mythic mechanic here is that these ads, until they are hit, so the boss spawns these coins that can be aimed and rolled. So you see that coin it's kind of hard to see, but that coin got rolled down and hit the ad. So if the coins are not rolled into an ad, which you see here, the coin hit the ad. If they're not hit by a coin, they have a buff on them that makes them unable to go below 20% health. So you essentially can't kill them if this happens. And based on the timing of the boss, if you miss these first 2 sets of coins, the boss just enrages and then you die. So, also, I think this is the coin that I think I killed Tettles with this. So so this is what it looks like when you're trying to aim the coin. It's really bad. It's hard to see. So yeah, I hit this coin and I just I murdered Tettles with this coin. I am sorry, man. I didn't mean to. I thought you'd get like an extra action, because like when you walk over to the coin, you get an extra action button, but I didn't think it would like start rolling the coin automatically. It's very hard to see where the ads are because you have to have your butt into the wall. It's not great. But I'm sorry, Mr. Tettles. I just murdered you with that fucking coin. But the other mechanic here is that you see this after the boss puts the 2 things, it spawns a superheated coil. What this coil does when it activates, or you can click it and it'll suck up these area denial pools. It's like you'll see he'll click it there and then it'll suck up those pools. But the mechanic of the boss is every time the boss does its tank hit, the tank gets a pool. Let's see if we can show it. So it's about to cast it. I think it's called the big hit. Yeah, so every time the boss cast is the big hit. It marks the tank and then one other person for these lightning pools. The tanks will probably end up dropping the lightning pool on themselves to like stack it up, and then you'll try and get these lightning pools out and away. But anytime you do mechanics and it spawns like that lightning coil you saw, that lightning coil will absorb some of the lightning pools, giving you some of the area back. So it's going to be a pretty fast-paced fight. You're going to be baiting the coins. You're going to be baiting the coins closer to the things you want to aim at, so you can hit the mobs with the coins and then feed it in. And I think the mobs have like a set spawn for each type, and then you're going to be, oh, we're going to kill this one and this one, then we're going to kill this one and this one, we're going to kill this one and this one. It'll be pretty scripted out once it's actually like plannable. But like I said, once again, this is going to be a big arms fight, just because it is simply boss damage or 2 target at most, and boss damage is very, very king in this raid. Very, very king. So it's just going to be an arms tier, man. Another small mechanic which is weird. So let's see, does it show? No, the coin's already on the ground. Let me. So these blue lines indicate where the coins spawn, and if you stand next to the coin as it's rolling, like you're close to it, you actually get a 10% damage buff and a movement speed buff. So that's actually really, really nice. But anyway, yeah, you miss coin, you just boss and rages and you die. All right, okay, we've talked about this. Dude, this video is longer than I thought it would be. Now let's go to Mugsy. Oh my god. I don't know if they're going to change this boss. I don't know if it's because we're kind of like a half pug. I don't know what was necessarily going on with how things are going. But this boss is going to be... They are with second to last bosses just hard cooking, man. Like these bosses are crazy. Stuff is happening all the time. So like take this mob for an example. This mob has a shield on it, and you have to kill this mob because it just does damage to your raid. But this mob has a shield on it, and it takes 99% reduced damage. So you have to start on one side of the room to spawn these mobs, and then you have to group up, and you're going to spawn bombs. Also, if a bomb is ever triggered, it spawns things that need to be soaked. But you have to spawn these bombs because... Oh, God. Oh, God. Okay, so basically you start over on this side. And this side spawns the adds and it spawns bombs. What's going to happen is you... Let's see when we get far enough to see the other side. So what we did is we spawned the bombs away, and then we soak this mechanic here. So we soak the mechanic. All right, now we're all just dead. Please, where do we go to the other side? So I can. We're having lag issues with these soaks, so it was kind of like messy. We couldn't do things right. We saw the other side a couple times, so I'm just trying to show it. Also, one thing that is interesting is this boss does not phase if any player is on the wrong side, so all of your players have to move to the correct side, which we didn't have everyone move to the correct side, so he enraged basically and blew us all up. I think the next pull, we do it right. Okay, so Elemental Carnage, he swaps over, cool, whatever. So the mechanic is you have to spawn these bombs over here and these adds over here. These adds that have this shield, you cannot remove this shield unless you're on this side of the fight and he does something called like electric finger guns. These jails cannot be, in the dungeon journal at least, cannot be broken through unless a bomb hits a wall. So you have to wait for these bombs to walk into the walls to explode. But while these bombs are walking into the walls and exploding, to open these walls up, they also drop stuff on the floor. And if those things aren't dropped on the floor, Okay, you see, right? So the bomb hit the wall and exploded. So now these need to be soaked, and while these soaks are happening, you're getting this ice shard mechanic, which you're about to see here, to deal with, and these ice shards will kill the player. Where are the ice shards? Come on, come on, come on, spawn. So these ice shards, right? So these ice shards will kill the player if they're interacted. So then you have to blow up these bombs, blow up these walls with the bombs while soaking the circles, and then you have these icicle mechanics that you have to hide behind. You have to LOS behind these walls, otherwise the ice shards just kill you. And then also the boss puts a debuff on you that makes you slide around. So like whenever you get targeted by the icicles, you start slipping and sliding around. The only way to deal with it is by touching this fire circle. So you have to LOS so you have to, while slipping and sliding around, a line of sight these icicles into the walls. You have to have enough bombs to break the walls, but you have enough walls to be able to hide behind for the icicles. After the icicles have gone through, then you have to remove your debuff by coming over to this fire circle. Bro, this boss is crazy. There's so many mechanics. And not only on top of that, when you get this boss to 40% health, you have to deal with both sides mechanics happening simultaneously, as far as I'm reading in the Dungeon Journal. And one of the reasons why arms is going to be insanely important on this fight is because this boss at 40% starts to soften rage, which means that every 5 seconds it gains 1% damage until everyone in your raid is dead. So execute damage is going to be very, very important. And oh my god, this raid is like crazy, man. Like, they went full on with the goblin and trash and garbage and stuff everywhere and Sonic. Like, bro, they went max crazy on these themes, and these bosses are crazy, and the tier sets are crazy, and the zones are cool. Like, this is going to be a crazy raid. I don't know how much people will enjoy this raid. We do get the stacking damage buff pretty early. I think it's within like week 3 or week 4. We start getting that stacking damage buff and healing buff, so maybe it'll be better for other players. But this might be a wild tier, man. This boss is going to be crazy. Although, like I said again, bosses like these, once you have a solidified plan of movement and how you're going to do things, and how you're going to position, how you're going to set stuff up, it'll make things way simpler and way easier. We're obviously kind of doing this stuff on the fly, so it's like way harder and way crazier. We do progress more as we pull it, but we only pulled it for like 30 minutes because we're like, bro, this boss is no, they might change. No. We only pulled this boss for like 30 minutes. Nobody wanted to like keep pulling this fucking thing, because this boss, even on heroic, is just a crazy nightmare. What a wild and interesting set of bosses that we have to deal with, man. It's very, very cool. It's very exciting. But this is really, really, really looking like a big, big arms tier. It's probably going to be Slayer arms. We're probably just going to be focusing on big single target. They buffed up Fatality, so it's going to be actually worth taking. But as they sent, the next couple videos I'll send through, what I'm really waiting for is for a PTR, essentially like a tuning pass, so we can kind of see what their ideas are at, and then we can kind of start structuring builds and ideas and guides and that kind of thing, as we know what they want to do. But this tier is gonna be an arms tier, from every which way we're looking at it so far. And I'm pretty sure even the last boss is mainly just like a single target fight. There might be I saw a couple ads in the fight, but it's probably going to be mainly, once again, single target prio with some cleave, so sweeping strikes, or if we need to pick it up, cleave. Cleave is a very good button now. But we're looking at an arms tier, guys. These bosses are crazy. They are wild. There is just stuff happening all the time. It's weird. I'm looking forward to it, but I am also kind of dreading what these fights might turn into, man. It is It is going to be something else. There's just stuff happening at all times, and it is going to be a wild ride. But thank you very much for watching. I am... Yeah, you see that ability, right? You see this ability he's about to cast? So this late into this side, he starts casting Storm Fury Finger Guns. And that is the ability that removes the shields from the adds from the other side of the fight. That we have yet to been able to damage. Like, fuck. Ooh, woo, woo, woo. Oh, this boss is going to be crazy, man. I do apologize, as obviously this this whole video was very, very rambly, but I just kind of wanted to talk about the raid, talk about PTR testing, talk about what class we're probably going to play, but this shit's looking wild, man. It's actually looking very crazy, tons and tons of mechanics, but of course, this is the first iteration that we're seeing. Everything could be changed top to bottom. Warrior is severely underperforming in most aspects currently, DPS-wise, but it looks like they are looking at tuning us up, and I'm looking forward to it, man. So the next things you'll probably see from me, I'm not sure what they're going to be, but I'll probably start thinking more about the arms guide coming up into this next tier. I might just do Slayer. I don't know if I'll do Slayer and Colossus. Just because I don't know how much value Colossus is going to get. It might be more of like a Mythic Plus spec, which will be fine. But no, I'll do one of each. I just need to figure out exactly what they're going to change, what our builds are going to look like, all that kind of stuff. So if you made it this far, sorry about it being so rambly, man. It just is what it is with going through all these bosses like this. But oh boy, that's a big video. That's longer than I expected. But yeah, I will talk at you next time. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for letting me gab. See you later, guys. Bye-bye. Arms tier.